I've had a number of people asking me if I could do a video on awakening and relationships and how those things go together. And the more I think of it, the more I realised and feel that really spiritual teachers shouldn't be giving relationship advice at all, to be honest. And I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear. They want to look to people that have had an awakening and ask, well, how do you manage to stay in a relationship, and how's the relationship changed? Has it got better? Has it got easier? You know, what have you done to make the relationship flourish? But realistically, spiritual teachers are no more suited to give relationship advice than they are to give advice on cooking or particle physics, unless they are specialised and experienced in that area. Really, it would be wise to say to people that are asking, maybe speak to a couples therapist, or maybe read some books on the matter. Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of videos from various spiritual teachers giving their two penneth, as we'd call it in Lancashire, their, tuppence, their piece on relationships and awakening, and what's important to realise, and how awakening changes the relationship process. But relationships are so personal. That's the very nature of them. They're interpersonal. They are specific to each individual, that no one size fits all. So to give kind of like really broad generic advice, well, isn't necessarily that useful, because where you're at might be completely different to where I'm at. So actually giving advice from here might not meet you at all. Another thing to recognise as well is that, there's a good number of spiritual teachers out there that aren't really, I would say, the paradigms of successful relationship either. We've seen again and again in spiritual circles the failed relationships, failed romantic relationships, maybe exploitation or coercion of students, for instance, or maybe divorce, or quite a lot of stories of infidelity within spiritual circles. And all that's pointing to is the absolute fact that spiritual teachers are human. Just like me, just like you, we are all human. We're all conditioned. We all have flaws and habits and tendencies. We're all susceptible to craving, no matter how awake we think we are. So for then a spiritual teacher who's had, multiple instances of infidelity and some failed marriages to give, and this includes me, by the way. I've not had multiple instances of infidelity, but yeah, I've had some failed relationships for sure. For me to give advice on relationships and how to be successful, I just think is way off the mark. There's one other aspect I think is really important to recognise, is that the view of what equates to a successful relationship is so strongly conditioned by the heteronormative view of men and women living monogamously together in a typical family unit. That is conditioned, clearly conditioned, and it's based on prevailing worldviews that have existed for a long time. Success in relationship is, I would say, whatever it takes in order to find connection and peace and happiness, love, whatever it takes. As long as no harm is being caused and there's honesty, as a foundation, I think it's whatever it takes. So it definitely doesn't necessarily look like a man and a woman living together in typical roles, finding the type of happiness that we receive through media, films, books, or that we see in the world necessarily. It can include anything and everything, really. From the range of, like dressing up like the Easter Bunny and getting jam smeared on you to fulfill your sexual pleasures. Why not? Like, if that's what you're into and it's consensual, it's absolutely valid. It may include non-monogamous relationships with consent. So polyamorous, sorry, it's a mouthful that, isn't it? Polyamorous relationships are an absolutely valid, not just valid, sometimes a really rich way to explore relationship with others. There are no rules. So then looking to somebody to say, can you tell me what the best way to navigate my relationship is? Well, you're asking them to give their point of view from their conditioned views and rules of relationship. That might not suit you. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't suit you. I would say, and this isn't advice, but the only thing I can say about it from my own experience is find out deeply what you want, regardless of awakening, regardless of spirituality, just on a deepest level, interpersonally, what do you want? Like really, just foundationally, what do you want? And how can you make that a reality? And then take the risk to have conversations. Have deep, risky, vulnerable conversations where you put it all out there into the world. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be straightforward. But together in relationship, you may be able to find a way through that satisfies both. I say both, maybe there's multiple people involved. All of the needs of the people involved might be satisfied. But it takes some vulnerability, and it takes time, and it takes work. What it doesn't take, I would say, is the views, the conditioned views of a spiritual teacher to tell you what you need for your relationship. It absolutely does not need that. I would say, if anything, it takes us dedicating ourselves to understanding what we need and exploring that with our relevant others. So realistically, I firmly believe, or think, maybe not believes right, but I feel that spiritual teachers are not really suited to give relationship advice. So maybe they shouldn't.